The following is a summary of a Sicha of the second day of Chag Shavuos and Shabbos Parshas Nasso Tov Shin Nun. In reference to the novelty of Matan Torah, the Gemara in Pesachim Daf Samches Amud Beis makes the following statement: Rav Yosef b'yom da'atzarta on Shavuos Omar said, Ilav hayoma dekagorim, if it wouldn't be for this day, kama Yosef ika b'shuka, there would be many Yosefs in the marketplace. Rashi says, Ilav hayoma shalamarti Torah v'nisrei mamti, if it wouldn't be for this day, which I learned Torah and I became elevated, Harei anoshim harbe bashuk sheshmon Yosef, there are many people in the marketplace who are called Yosef. Uma beini leveinam, what would be the difference between me and them? So in other words, Rav Yosef is bringing out the greatness of Matan Torah by saying that had it not been for Matan Torah, there would be many Yosefs in the shuk, in the marketplace, and there would be no difference between me and them. We can ask on this piece of Gemara 3 questions. Number 1, why does it say Kama Yosef Ika B'shuka? There would be many Yosefs in the marketplace. Why doesn't it just say there would be many people in the marketplace? What's the association specifically with the name Yosef? Question number 2, why did it say Kama Yosef Ika B'shuka? There would be many Yosefs in the marketplace. Why not say there would be many people in the world? Why specifically in the shuk? Question number 3, in Rav Yosef's statement, it doesn't tell you what the greatness of Rav Yosef was. It just says, had it not been for the day of Shavuos, there would be many Yosefs in the one marketplace. But what was the greatness of Rav Yosef? In order to understand this, we need to preface that Rav Yosef here is explaining the greatness of Hayuma, of the day of Shavuos, in reference to the people who prior to Matan Torah were Yosefs and who were in the shuk, but nevertheless there's an advantage now after Matan Torah of Rav Yosef in the shuk. Let's explain this by first of all explaining the concept of Yosef in the shuk. The shuk is a marketplace. This is the place where in the world we need to draw into the world holiness, to add into the world holiness. That's the concept of Yosef. Yosef Hashem li bein acher. Yosef was called because Hashem would add on to me bein acher, making an acher something which is different, separate, apart from a bein, drawing that which is not in the realm of holiness into the realm of holiness. And in the marketplace is not just any public domain. Rather, this is a place of buying and selling, acquisition, where a person can make an acquisition and take that which is worldly and draw it into the world of Hashem. Now, in fact, before the giving of the Torah, there were Kama Yosef Ika B'shuka. There were a number of Yosefs in the marketplace, starting from the first Yosef in Mitzrayim, who, because of his position, certainly brought Kedusha, holiness, into Mitzrayim. He was in charge, the viceroy of the whole of Mitzrayim, and therefore, certainly, he brought matters of tzedek, v'yosher, of righteousness, into Mitzrayim. Because the whole purpose of creation is la'asos l'saken, is to correct the world. Similarly, by Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, all of whom sat and learned in yeshiva and kept the entire Torah before it was given, bringing additional kedusha into the world. Avram built altars, Yitzchak gave tzedakah, Yaakov, his work with the sheep was the idea of bringing kedusha into the world. And similarly, by the Shavatim, each one of them, because they were commanded by the Avos to bring tzedakah or mishpat into the world, drew kedusha into the world. So the world, which was created in the very beginning, lasos l'saken, to correct it, had many people in the world who added kedusha into the world. However, what Rav Yosef said was that even though before the giving of the Torah, Kama Yosef Iker B'Shuka, there were many in the marketplace, in the place of acquisition of bringing holiness into the world and acquiring the world into the realm of holiness. There were many Yosefs, there were many people who added from the Acher and making it into the Ben, taking from that which is not in the realm of holiness into the realm of holiness. Nevertheless, there was a seismic change on the day of Matan Torah. The Medrash says that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give the Torah to Yisrael, there was the annulment of the decree. Originally, the Elyonim, the upper worlds, did not descend to the lower, and the lower did not ascend to the higher. However, by Matan Torah, that decree was torn, and there was the ability given that there should be the fusion between the upper and the lower worlds. And consequently, that focuses on the difference prior to Matan Torah and post Matan Torah. Prior to Matan Torah, even though they did add in Kedusha to the world, however, it was not integrated or internalized in the physicality of the world. There wasn't the capability of transforming the physicality of the world. However, once that decree had been abolished, it was possible for the world to be transformed from a public domain to a private domain of Hashem. Now, in this statement of Rav Yosef, Kama Yosef Iker B'Shuka, we also have hidden in the word Kama this concept, because the word Kama indicates that before Matan Torah there were many different ways, and depending on the person who was doing it, their spiritual level, there were many different ways and times how each one achieved that bringing an acquisition of the unholy into the holy. However, after Matan Torah, there wasn't many different ways, but rather one way. That was the way of the Torah. And that one way of the Torah was the way to bring everything within the private domain of Hashem. We can give further explanation to this by quoting another Gemara in Sukkah Daf Memhei Amud Beis. The Gemara says in reference to the Rashbi, Rashbi says, Ra'isi b'nei aliyah, I have seen men of great elevation, however, they are few. And he says, if there are 1,000, me and my son are among them. If there are 100, me and my son are among them. If there are only 2, then it's me and my son. Now, again, in this Gemara, we can ask a number of questions. Number one, why does it say, Ra'isi b'nei aliyah? I have seen men of elevation. And it doesn't say just, there are only a few men of elevation. Second of all, what was his sofek? What was the doubt over here? Whether there was 1,000, 100, and so on and so forth. Isn't Torah a clear Torah? Surely there should have been clarity in this matter. And third of all, if the Bnei Aliyah, the men of elevation, were reduced just to him and his son, of what relevance is that to all Yidden? The answer is that in this step-by-step seeing the Bnei Aliyah, there is hinted to the avodah of all Yidden. We know that everything down here in this world results from hishtalshalus, a chain order from that which is in the higher world. So, for example, the fire in the Nefesh HaBahamis, we need to put it on the altar to elevate it to Hashem. And everything is done down here by Bnei Yisrael with their avodah. In fact, they're called Bnei Elyon Kulchem, which means that even when they are down here in this world, their job is to reflect and to elevate into the higher world, making a dira b'tachtonim over here. And this, in addition to being mu'atin, the idea of bitul, in addition to that, the idea is the reduction of the various different ways of doing it until chadhu, until it's done with the innermost level of the neshama, the level of Yechidah. So the reference to 1,101 isn't because there was a doubt in the numbers, it's a reference to different levels of people, and that their avodah should ultimately be with the Yechidah of the Nefesh. And that's what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, Ra'isi b'nei aliyah. He's seen the b'nei aliyah, which seeing it is with the absolute truth. In other words, he saw all the various different levels, and ultimately he saw that there is one Yechidah with which we need, as Bnei Elyon, as elevated people, to elevate the world and to bring it into the realm of Kedusha. And this was all achieved by the Bnei Aliyah on the day of Matan Torah. Because Rav Yosef said, Kama Yosef Ika B'Shuka, although there were many Yosefs before Matan Torah, but now, after Matan Torah, there is one path, the path of Torah. And in fact, that's hinted to in the words of Rashi. Rashi says, Ilav Hayuma, if it wouldn't be for this day, Shalamadti Torah v'nisre mamti, which I learned Torah and I was elevated. In fact, Rav Yosef points out that his elevation came specifically through Limud HaTorah. One of the major differences between Torah and mitzvahs is that Torah is compared to blood and mitzvahs are compared to the limbs. The limbs of the body are 248. In all of those limbs, you have one blood that goes around them all. Mitzvahs are how we affect the world, and consequently, they are within the parameters of the world. So the mitzvah of Sukkah is specifically on Sukkahs, and they are within the parameters of time. However, Torah is like the blood which goes through the body, and that stands higher than time. That's the wisdom of Hashem which transcends time. And that's why Rabbi Yosef said that Ilav Hayuma Shalomadati Torah. If it wouldn't be the day which I learned Torah, which elevated me higher than the time, then there would have been Kama Yosef Iker B'Shuka. There would have been many Yosefs in the marketplace, all doing it differently. But now, since the Torah has been given, and I learned Torah, which that Torah Achas, that one Torah, brings the Achdus and brings the oneness and speciality to Bnei Yisrael, that they can elevate the world and acquire it into the private domain of Hashem. This is also connected with the Parshias which we read before Matan Torah, Parshas Bamidbar, and after Matan Torah, Parshas Nasso. Parshas Bamidbar, it says that somebody who doesn't make themselves like a midbar, a desert, and hefka and holiness, cannot acquire Torah. In other words, when it comes to limud ha-Torah, a person has to literally ignore everything else which is going on and focus completely on their limud ha-Torah, being the yichud nifla, the tremendous unity, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, which they have with Hashem. In Parshas Nasso es Rosh, the ultimate elevation of the head is when a person learns Torah. And consequently, only when they are in that elevated status of limud ha-Torah can they transcend the world. This gives us a tremendous lesson and hoirah for Shavuos every single year. Hayomim ha'elu nizkarim anasim. The repetition each year of Shavuos is so that we should become elevated each year. And each year we need to relive that ilav hayuma, the kagarim kama Yosef Iker B'Shuka. In other words, that our limud ha-Torah this year has to be be'ein aroich, much greater than it was in previous years. So that in reference to what happened before, Kama Yosef Iker B'Shuka. But this year we have a new Rav Yosef, a new addition in Torah. And certainly as it was in that year in Tavshin Nun, which was a year of Nisim, a year of Reimamus. The bottom line is that since the day of Matan Torah and its continuation the days afterwards, especially in the Shabbos afterwards, these are Yomim Musugalim, these are days which are extremely auspicious to take good decisions in Limud HaTorah, knowing that Moshe Kibbel Torah Misinai, and knowing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu extracted the Yidden and elevated them and brought them into the deepest union with him through Torah. Therefore, each of us should strengthen our Shiurei Torah, the Shiurim of Chitas and of Rambam, and in addition to add on Lohoisif, the Shiur, so that each and every available spare moment be taken with Torah. And in addition, we should take away time from other things in order to dedicate them to learn Torah, especially establishing shiurim in public, teaching many Yidden, 10 Yidden. And certainly this is and will bring additional bracha, as it says in B'chukoisai Teilechu, that if we will be a melim b'Torah, we will engage in Torah, then Hashem will give us all the brachas and add life on to our lives. This is the tzav and drishas hashah. This is the command and the demand of this particular moment. In addition to our own shiurim, each person should fulfill the directive of the Mishnah, V'ha'amidu talmidim harbe, and should raise at least 10 other Yidden to be their Talmidim. And this is applicable to men, women, and children. The chiyuv of women to learn is quite vast in the halachas that they need to know, in the inyanim of emunas Hashem and avas Hashem and achdus Hashem. And women have for long now had public shiurim, and therefore, in addition to learning themselves, women should also establish public shiurim for women, at least for 10 and more women. And similarly for children, what children learn, they should teach to other children. And all this should be in a way of bahaloischa es haneres, that by kindling the wick and flame of another, it should go from one to another, ad shetehei hashalheves olam yaleh, so that the flame goes up by itself. This is the command and the demand of this moment. Standing as we are before the Geula, we must take the acher, those who are outside the realm, and bring them into the level of a ben through hafotzas hayados and hafotzas hamayonos chutza, and raising many talmidim. This, by extension, also applies lahavdil to bnei Noach, as the Rambam says that those who have the capability should reach out to bnei Noach, as Moshe Rabbeinu commanded us to bring the whole world to a situation of lodas es Hashem. In order to add on vitality to this campaign, each person should discuss with their Rav and inform them of their additional shiurei Torah. Those who wish to should send their decisions to 770, to the shul of the Frierdiker Rebbe, of the Yosef of our generation. And certainly there is a chazaka that those satalach are brought to the oil, to the tzion, and for sure the Rebbe will arouse bracha and hatzlacha for those people who take on these good decisions. And the main thing is that through all of this additional Torah learning, Yosef Hashem Shenis Yodoi, Hashem will add and stretch out his hand and bring us all as a kahal gadol back to Yerushalayim HaKodesh with Mashiach Tzidkenu Umala Haaretz Deas Hashem Kamayim Leyom Echasim, and then the world will be full of the knowledge of Hashem as the waters cover the sea.